I had about a 2-hour lunch yesterday with an expat who has been an expat in and out of the Philippines for more than 20 years. And so naturally, we got to talking about various experiences, and I was telling him about some of mine when I very first moved to the Philippines, like literally the first 2 months. And he's very seasoned now, of course, has seen a lot of things. And he was telling me about the time that he got scammed by another expat, which in his early years, he just didn't see it coming. It wasn't something anybody had ever given him a heads up about. Now, people had told him, hey, be careful, some of the locals, taxi drivers will do this or that. But nobody ever mentioned to him that his actual problem might come from a fellow expat. So here's what happened. During his early years, when he first came to the Philippines, he was looking for an apartment. Now, 20 years ago, there was very little on the internet, and so he was doing it the old-fashioned way, word of mouth, driving around, looking for a for rent sign, and he happened across this place that had a for rent sign in the window. So he called the number, and it was an expat, and he met with him, took a look at the apartment, and liked it. So he said, yeah, okay, let's go ahead, we'll draw up a lease. So the expat sat down with him the next day, not only provided a lease, but also said, oh, and just by the way, just so you know, this is on the up and up, here's papers from my attorney, here's my deed of ownership for the condo, everything looked legit. So the man I was speaking with yesterday tells me that he looked at all the paperwork, everything looked jake, so he went ahead, signed the lease, gave the guy the first month's, the last month's, and the current month deposit and payment, which was a substantial amount of money. I forget the exact amount. So he goes to the money exchange, grabs out the cash, pays the guy gives him the keys. So the expat that I was speaking with moved all his stuff in and decided to go out and get some dinner. When he returned, he gets to the lobby and all his belongings have been moved out of the apartment and are now sitting there in the lobby. He recognized his own stuff right away. So he went to the management of the condo and said, of course, what's going on? And it turns out that this expat that he had made this deal with did not own the condo, did not own it, and had basically illegally subleased it, taken the money, and run. When I was getting ready to move to the Philippines in 2011, because I spent from 2011 to 2012 preparing myself to go to the Philippines, I only knew one person, a former coworker who actually was living in Mindanao, there in Davao. And I asked him to come over for dinner so that I could ask him a bunch of questions because I didn't know I hadn't even been to the Philippines. And I was surprised that his first thing before he said anything about the Philippines, I still remember he was sitting there at the kitchen table, and the very first piece of advice he told me was he said, if you have any drama or problems in the Philippines, it's more likely going to happen from another expat and not with a local. And I was highly surprised that he said that. So, of course, I asked him to kind of flesh out his comment. And what he said was that for the most part in the Philippines, everybody's very polite, courteous, and you pretty much don't have really a lot of problems with the vast majority of Filipino people. Now, when you start getting into little subsets, like some, again, everybody knows my position on use of the word all. When you start getting involved with some taxi drivers, yeah, you've got unscrupulous people who will try to take advantage of the fact that you're a tourist. And then same with the dating realm. Sometimes some of the Filipino women you will meet, again, unscrupulous, will do things, say things that are simply not true in order to take advantage of you. Now, when it comes to other expats, the same rule holds. The majority of them are good guys. I have been meeting with expats for meetups and online and whatever since 2012, and I can say that about 95% of them are good guys. They're just here to retire and have a great time and relax, enjoy the rest of their life. But then you have this, what I've always called the lunatic fringe, that 5% or so who cause all the problems. And these are guys who have either one of two things going on. Either these are expats who have backed themselves financially into a corner. They didn't plan, they have no income, they're running out of money, they know it, and they will do anything to stay in the Philippines, even if that means screwing over another expat. The other group within this lunatic 5% fringe are expats who I simply say they've got bad wiring. These are guys who, if they had stayed in their home country, probably would have ended up getting either sued, thrown in jail, beaten up, or a combination of the three. Because they have social problems. They have internal bad wiring. These are people who lack remorse, sociopathic, narcissistic, sadistic. These are expats who were a problem child in their home country. Now they've moved to the Philippines, where they get the impression that just because their dollar or euro goes further in the Philippines, somehow that makes them more important. And they become more emboldened. And they become a problem when you cross paths with them. And these are people, again, with bad wiring who will try to complicate your life. They'll try to destroy your happy relationship with your Filipina. They will do anything they can to harm you, even though you've given them no cause for it, again, because they have bad wiring. They're messed up in their head. So I just want to get this across to you. It's probably one of the first pieces of advice I was given that the other guy was not given. And I found it to be true. Over the last 11 years, I have found it to be true that when I count all of the drama and problems I've had with local Filipinos, it's been very minor, maybe 4 instances in 11 years, and it was minor stuff. But when it comes to the problems and drama that I've had with other expats, the people you would least expect to have problems with, there's quite a list. I could give you quite a list of issues I have had with these problematic, socially retarded, bad wiring portion of expats. So in the future, the thing to take away from this is when you meet expats, trust them slowly. Do not make any kind of big financial decision with an expat you barely met a week ago. I remember during it must have been my first 3 weeks in the Philippines, living on Mactan. I was sitting in a cafe. I ended up getting approached by this other expat, and he was a young guy. He was maybe 28. And back then, in 2012, there weren't many digital nomads, very few. This guy was doing a lot of affiliate marketing type of stuff. So he approached me, we got to talking, and eventually exchanged contact info. And within a week, he was messaging me that he had problems moving his money, but it was on the way. He was waiting for his affiliate payments, and he needed to pay his rent, and wanted to know if I could loan him $400. So I told him no. Again, I don't know this guy. And he swore up and down, but I'll pay you back. He goes, look, here's my affiliate account. Here's the balance I got coming in. You know, he had all the receipts to back up his story. But still, I told him, no, I just can't help you. I got my own budget to keep on track and can't do it. So finally, he relented and went away. So 48 hours later, I look on his Facebook and he's posting pictures of himself. Now, mind you, I had just spoken with him there in Mactan, Philippines. 48 hours later, he's showing pictures on his Facebook. He just landed in Thailand. I was never going to see that money again. But he apparently found some other sucker to fund his way to Thailand. So keep your head on a swivel. Be a little bit suspicious in a healthy way when you meet new expats.